Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In a small, crowded New York City cafe, Marcus, a young black waiter, busied himself between the tables. For years, he had served customers with a smile, despite the occasional disdainful stares and whispers behind his back. This morning, the cafe was particularly busy. The scent of freshly ground coffee mingled with that of warm croissants. At a table by the window, a woman in a wheelchair, elegantly dressed but visibly fragile, was waiting for him. She had a vacant expression, as if the world around her didn't really interest her. Marcus approached cautiously and bowed slightly. "Good morning, madam, I'll take care of you. What can I get you this morning?" The woman looked at him with an indifferent eye and answered in a soft but firm voice. "A black coffee, please, and a croissant." Marcus nodded and went back behind the counter to prepare the order. A few minutes later, he placed the cup and plate in front of her. She thanked him with a simple nod, without smiling. Then, with an unexpected gesture, she handed him a newspaper clipping folded in four. Marcus frowned. It wasn't money, nor a tip, just a yellowed piece of paper. Curious and a little suspicious, he unfolded the clipping. His eyes widened. On the front page, a photo showed him, without his consent, serving a customer in the cafe. But that wasn't all. The headline in capital letters was provocative and humiliating. "The black waiter causes outrage in the upscale neighborhood." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. He had always known that his skin color attracted stares and sometimes hasty judgments, but he never imagined he would be portrayed like this in a newspaper. The woman looked at him calmly, almost with quiet satisfaction, as if waiting for his reaction. Marcus clutched the newspaper clipping in his hand. His heart was pounding. Around him, the cafe continued to hum with conversation and the clinking of cups, but for him, everything had suddenly stopped. The woman in the wheelchair, Mrs. Caldwell, watched him with icy calm. Marcus felt a dull anger rise within him, but he knew he had to keep his cool. Why did you give me this?" he asked, his voice trembling but controlled. Mrs. Caldwell smiled slightly, a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "So you can see how some people perceive you, young man. Even when you're helpful, even when you do your job properly, some people only see your skin color." Marcus felt a burning pang of injustice in his chest. He had worked hard for every dollar he earned, he had always been polite, respectful, and now he was being reduced to a cliché, a sensational story for the pleasure of curious or malicious readers. He picked up his cup and plate and, with a controlled gesture, carried them to the table. "I'm not an object of curiosity," he replied calmly but firmly. "You can publish whatever you want, it will never change who I am." Mrs. Caldwell stared at him, a slight smirk on her face. Marcus knew she thought she'd intimidated him. But deep down, he felt something powerful, a determination to prove her wrong. As he walked back behind the counter, he made a silent decision: he was going to change this story, but not with anger, with success, dignity, and pride. At that precise moment, he didn't yet know that this newspaper clipping would be the catalyst that would transform his life forever. After Mrs. Caldwell left, Marcus stood behind the counter for a few moments, newspaper in hand. His colleagues whispered among themselves, some sympathetic, others a little embarrassed. But Marcus knew he had to act intelligently. Anger wouldn't be enough. He realized that this newspaper could become an unintentional weapon, but only if he knew how to use it to his advantage. When he got home that evening, he carefully flipped through the pages. The photo showed him from a ridiculous angle, and the article was full of exaggerated, almost ridiculous terms: the provocative waiter, the chic cafe scandal, racial tension. It was all there. But something caught his eye. The article was based on a witness account, inaccurate and biased, and some facts could easily be disputed. The next day, Marcus gathered his courage and went to the newspaper's offices. Standing in front of the reception desk, he calmly announced, "I would like to speak to the editor. The article published about me is inaccurate." The editor, a middle-aged man with a stern look, received him after a few minutes. Marcus explained, clearly and methodically, all the wrong points, even providing photos and testimonials from regular customers. The editor looked at him, surprised by the determination of this young waiter. "You're right," he admitted after a moment of silence. "We'll publish a correction." Marcus nodded, but deep down, he knew it wouldn't be enough. Mrs. Caldwell, on the other hand, would continue to underestimate him. He had to do more, prove your worth through your actions, not your words. He returned to the cafe with renewed energy, more confident, more determined. Every gesture, every smile he offered the customers became a small victory. He knew that true revenge would come not from the corrected article, but from his own success, and that the day would come when Mrs. Caldwell would regret her actions. In the following days, Marcus worked with renewed energy. Every customer was greeted with a warm smile, every order served with precision and attention. But this time, he wasn't doing it just to earn a living, he wanted to leave an impression that could never be erased. One afternoon, while he was arranging cups behind the counter, he noticed a surprising sight. Mrs. Caldwell had just entered the cafe, pushed in by her assistant. She looked less confident than usual, and Marcus felt a strange inner satisfaction. She sat down at her usual table, and Marcus approached, professional as always. "Good morning, Mrs. Caldwell. Your coffee as usual?" She nodded, but this time she didn't take out a newspaper. Marcus watched her demeanor. She seemed uncomfortable, almost ashamed. A few minutes later, a problem erupted at the other end of the cafe. A customer was demanding a forgotten order, becoming disproportionately angry. Marcus rushed to resolve the situation calmly and efficiently. Within minutes, he had diffused the customer's anger while maintaining the quality of service. Mrs. Caldwell stared at him, mouth agape. Marcus felt her heavy gaze, and a slight smile played on her lips. She realized that his little game of humiliation had failed. But Marcus didn't stop there. He knew that to truly gain the upper hand, he had to move from simple defense to resounding victory. He began to think of ways to turn his talent and integrity into real recognition, organizing events at the cafe, retaining influential customers, getting noticed by food critics. That day, for the first time, Marcus understood an essential truth: the best revenge was not to humiliate those who had offended him, but to shine so brightly that the humiliation would fall back on them naturally. And as Mrs. Caldwell left the cafe, her face closed, Marcus knew the real countdown had just begun. She would soon see that he was not a simple waiter, but someone whose strength and determination exceeded anything she could have imagined. A few weeks later, Marcus organized a small event at the cafe, a special tasting for regular customers and a few of the city's influential food critics. He spent hours preparing every detail, carefully choosing the recipes and the service. Every croissant, every coffee was a testament to his dedication and talent. On the day of the event, the cafe was packed. The critics, amazed by the quality of the service and the warmth of the welcome, took notes and chatted enthusiastically among themselves. Marcus, despite the pressure, remained calm and his smile impeccable. And then she came in. Mrs. Caldwell, as always, in her wheelchair, but this time with a look of disbelief on her face. She had heard about the event and had decided to come, probably to see if Marcus would rise to the occasion. But what she saw left her speechless. Every customer seemed fascinated by his service, complimenting him warmly, and conversing with him with respect and admiration. Even the harshest critics took the time to note his skill and professionalism. Marcus approached her with his usual polite smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Caldwell. I see you've decided to honor us with your presence." She stammered a few words, but Marcus wasn't really listening. He was focused on making his customers happy and making a positive impact. And there, right before his eyes, he saw something he'd been waiting for, a change in Mrs. Caldwell's attitude. She no longer looked arrogant or self-assured. For the first time, she seemed aware that she had underestimated Marcus. That day marked a turning point. Marcus realized that his patience, professionalism, and determination had begun to pay off. He had turned a moment of humiliation into a resounding victory, visible to all, even to the one who had once belittled him. And deep down, Marcus knew this was just the beginning. The next chapters of his success would be even more spectacular, and Mrs. Caldwell would understand, little by little, that she had made a mistake in underestimating him. As the months passed, Marcus didn't just shine in the small cafe. His talent and professionalism caught the attention of several renowned food critics, and soon the cafe became a reference in the neighborhood. Customers came from far and wide to taste his creations and admire his unique way of serving with elegance and attention. Mrs. Caldwell, for her part, still dropped by the cafe occasionally, but her attitude had changed radically. She no longer looked at Marcus with condescension, now it was a mixture of surprise and slight concern. Her looks, once filled with arrogance, betrayed a silent recognition. Marcus wasn't just a waiter, he had become the soul and pride of coffee. One day, a major event was held, a New York City-wide food and service competition. Marcus was invited as a representative of his cafe. The challenge was intense, with participants from the city's finest establishments. But Marcus, confident and focused, impressed the judges with his skill, attention to detail, and unique way of creating a memorable experience for each customer. At the end of the day, the verdict was in. Marcus won first prize, a prestigious honor that boosted his reputation throughout the city. Mrs. Caldwell was present among the spectators. She couldn't help but applaud, but this time, her look was different. No more mockery, no more contempt. She understood now that she had been too quick to judge a young server based on prejudice. Marcus, for his part, savored his inner victory as much as the public recognition. He knew that this rise was not only for him, but also for all those who are underestimated because of their skin color, status, or appearance. And in a corner of his mind, he remembered that first humiliation with the newspaper. A humiliation that had been the driving force behind his resounding success. After winning the competition, Marcus's reputation exploded. Renowned investors and restaurateurs began to take an interest in him. Partnership proposals and offers to open his own establishment poured in. Marcus knew he was on to something. The chance to transform your life dramatically. One morning, while discussing a proposed opening with an influential investor, he saw Ms. Caldwell enter the cafe. This time, she wasn't alone. Several of her neighborhood friends, known for their influence and social status, were with her. She had obviously heard about Marcus's meteoric rise. Marcus, unperturbed, approached with his usual smile. "Hello, Mrs. Caldwell. I see you're still following my route." She blushed slightly and looked away. Marcus took note of this small sign. She was beginning to realize the extent of his success and to understand that she had seriously underestimated the young waiter she had tried to humiliate. A few days later, the investor Marcus had spoken to offered him a unique opportunity to run his own cafe-restaurant, with complete freedom over the concept, the menu, and the decor. Marcus accepted immediately. This was no longer just revenge for a past humiliation, it was a chance to build something big, respected and lasting. On opening day, Marcus's coffee shop attracted the city's elite, food critics, and eager customers. Curious and fascinated, Mrs. Caldwell stood at the entrance, unable to hide her astonishment. She had seen Marcus as a mere waiter, but now, he was the architect of his own success. Marcus said nothing. He served each customer with his usual skill, each gesture precise and elegant, each smile warm and sincere. And in Mrs. Caldwell's eyes, he finally read what he had been waiting for, the silent recognition of his superiority. This unexpected opportunity was no longer just a personal victory, it was proof that dignity, hard work and perseverance always overcome prejudice. A few weeks after the opening of his coffee shop, Marcus noticed that Mrs. Caldwell continued to drop by regularly, still with that mixture of curiosity and unease on her face. She seemed to be looking for some sign, some flaw, but all she saw was Marcus's perfection of service and resounding success. One afternoon, she found herself alone at her table, and Marcus, taking his courage in both hands, decided to approach. "Good morning, Mrs. Caldwell," he said calmly. "How do you like the place?" She looked down, searching for words. After a long silence, she whispered. I have to admit I wasn't expecting this. I thought that you were just a waiter." Marcus looked at her, impassive but firm. "And now?" She took a deep breath, finally realizing the magnitude of her mistake. Now I see that I judged someone by their skin color and their position. You proved me wrong. Marcus nodded, his expression gentle but relentless. Exactly. I wasn't trying to humiliate you in return. My success isn't revenge against you. It's the result of my hard work, my determination, and my dignity. Mrs. Caldwell bowed her head, ashamed but aware of the lesson. Marcus, however, returned to his service, every elegant gesture, every attentive smile, every action demonstrating that true strength comes from within and not from resentment. From that day on, Mrs. Caldwell stopped her attempts at judgment and condescension. She even began to admire Marcus, silently, realizing that the humiliation she had tried to create had never had power over him. This silent confrontation marked a final turning point. Marcus had transformed a humiliation into a triumph, and in his success, he had given a life lesson to all those who had underestimated him. Marcus's coffee shop quickly became an emblematic place in the neighborhood. His reputation now extended beyond the surrounding streets. Customers came from all over the city, and some even from abroad, attracted by the unique combination of talent, impeccable service, and human warmth. Marcus didn't just serve, he encouraged and trained young servers, teenagers, and young adults from the neighborhood to learn his trade, to cultivate respect, patience, and professionalism. Each gesture he taught was accompanied by a life lesson: dignity and hard work always overcome prejudice. Mrs. Caldwell, who continued to pass by the cafe, watched all this in silence. She saw young people, often from modest backgrounds, dazzled by Marcus's kindness and competence. She realized that what she had once underestimated was not only an exceptional server, but a true role model and leader for an entire community. One evening, as Marcus was leaving the cafe after a long day, Mrs. Caldwell approached him. "Marcus, I wanted to tell you. I'm impressed. You've changed not only your life, but the lives of many around you. I never would have imagined." Marcus looked at her calmly, a slight smile on his lips. "Thank you, Miss Caldwell. But what you see is not personal revenge. It is the result of believing in yourself, despite those who doubt or judge without knowing." That day marked a new chapter. Marcus was no longer just a young waiter humiliated by a newspaper and an arrogant woman. He was an inspirational figure, a living example of courage and perseverance, and even those who had doubted him were beginning to understand the strength of his resilience. And as the lights in the cafe slowly dimmed, Marcus knew one thing for sure: his success was not only his own, it was that of the entire neighborhood that he had inspired and transformed. A few months later, Marcus received a prestigious invitation to participate in a national gastronomic gala where the country's most promising and innovative talents would be recognized. It was the ultimate opportunity to show that his success was not local, but worthy of national recognition. On the night of the gala, Marcus entered the brightly lit room, impeccably dressed and confident. The spotlight seemed to follow his every move as he greeted the guests with elegance and professionalism. Among the crowd was Ms. Caldwell once again, this time accompanied by other members of the city's high society. Her gaze betrayed admiration mixed with regret. She had underestimated Marcus from the start. When the award for Best Emerging Talent of the Year was announced, Marcus's name echoed throughout the room. He took the stage, his heart pounding but his head held high. The applause was thunderous, and even Ms. Caldwell, unable to hide her astonishment, stood to applaud, silently acknowledging the superiority and merit of Marcus. On stage, Marcus spoke, humble but firm. "This award isn't just for me. It's for everyone who has been underestimated, humiliated, or wrongly judged. It's proof that hard work, perseverance, and self-respect can transform every humiliation into strength." His words echoed around the room. It wasn't personal revenge, but a universal lesson. Mrs. Caldwell, sitting in the crowd, felt the truth of every word. She had tried to belittle Marcus, but it was he, with dignity and determination, who had dazzled the whole world. That night, Marcus didn't just celebrate his success. He celebrated the victory of integrity over prejudice, and for Ms. Caldwell, it was an unforgettable lesson: true power lies not in judgment, but in greatness of soul and hard work. A few weeks after the gala, Marcus had reached the height of his success. His cafe restaurant had become not only a renowned culinary hotspot, but also a center of training and inspiration for the neighborhood's youth. Customers came not only for the taste of his dishes, but for experience the unique service and kindness. One morning, while he was preparing coffee for the opening, Mrs. Caldwell entered for the last time. This time, she was alone, visibly nervous and full of respect. Marcus greeted her with his usual warm, professional smile. "Hello, Mrs. Caldwell. It's nice to see you again." She hesitated, then, in a voice more humble than she had ever had. "Marcus. I wanted to apologize. I was unfair, arrogant, and contemptuous. I humiliated you once, and today. I realize how wrong I was." Marcus looked at her calmly, without an ounce of resentment. "Your apologies are accepted. But remember, true victory is not measured by the humiliation of others, but by what one builds oneself." Mrs. Caldwell nodded, deeply moved. For the first time, she understood that Marcus was not just a waiter she had tried to belittle, but a man who had transformed humiliation into a resounding and inspiring triumph. That day, Marcus smiled as he looked around the cafe filled with happy customers, young waiters he was training, and people from all walks of life who had come to admire his work. He had not only avenged his honor, but he had done much more. He had transformed his life and the lives of everyone around him. And as the morning sun illuminated the neighborhood, Marcus knew one thing for sure: he had won total revenge, and no one could ever erase his dignity, his success, and his legacy. The woman who had once humiliated him left, her head bowed but her heart full of respect, and Marcus continued to smile at life, aware that his true power lay in his perseverance and greatness of soul.